inviting me, and thank you everybody for, oops, that's not the one that I wanted to show you. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's late in the evening already. Okay, can you hear me? Hello? Glenn, can you hear
Yes,
me?
yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you everybody who is present here, because I can imagine it's quite late and certainly everybody's tired, but you're just heroes. You're still here. Every time I think about the issues to be discussed during any presentation at the conference, I always think about the last teacher training courses and the problems that we discussed there. And teaching reading is one of them. And that's why I'm sure, just if I remind you about this thing, uh, whenever you ask people which of the 4 skills is the most difficult to teach, people normally say, well, listening, well, speaking, but hardly ever people say reading. I think you agree with me. I cannot open the chat to see if you agree with me or not. Yes, I opened it. Yeah, and that's why, I'm convinced that reading is actually a very, very serious and kind of underestimated skill to teach. And if we look at the definitions of reading, one is from Wikipedia and the other one is from study.com, you can see that these definitions have common things here, that this is a complex, and this is a very important thing here, complex cognitive process of decoding symbols to derive meaning. So it's getting the meaning from the written input and not necessarily words and letters. We will have seen Egyptian inscriptions, right? Where the text is made of pictures. So that's also visual input, and we also decode the meaning. We also extract the meaning from there. So that's why these keywords lead us to drive us to the conclusion that reading is a very, very complex skill. And quite often, again, from my experience as a teacher trainer, I can say that quite often we don't quite understand how complex, oops, yeah, how complex and how kind of difficult this skill is. And for this reason, I would like you to look at these lots of words that we normally come across when we read about reading, when we talk about reading. Lots of different lots of different words here. And which of them do you think are the main sub-skills that we are developing in our reading lessons? Please use the chat and drop me several words. I'm pretty much sure that you will write skimming and scanning. Of course, you recognize these 2 words, right? But the other ones, which ones do you think are the main ones, the core ones that we need to develop? Anticipating, summarizing. Okay, micro level clues. Paraphrasing for reading. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, Irina, inference, right? Exactly. Okay. Okay, good. I just need to save time. I would like to read more, but I need to save time because I had to squeeze this presentation into a shorter time. So look what I have. I have these things like inference, well, skimming and scanning, as I said. Certainly we have intensive reading. Deducing meaning from context, that's a very important reading sub-skill. Before reading, anticipating is a really vital skill that we need to develop. And also inference, that's the level when we actually get the meaning from outside the text, right? So as we can see, this skill is very complex. And this skill, we have a lot of sub-skills, and that's why we need to have kind of conscious attitude to what sub-skill are we developing actually, right? And I just wanted us to have a quick look at the tasks that we give for reading. And the question is it scanning, skimming? Is it intensive reading, inference, deducing meaning from context, or just the poor task? Okay. So again, I really want you to use the chat to assess this one. For example, here are 3 texts and 3 headings. Match the headings to the text. What kind of task is it? Anybody in the chat? You can't see it? Oh. Uh, the task is, this is the list of subskills here. Scanning, skimming, intensive reading, inference, deducing the meaning from context, just a poor task. So, and the task itself is, here are 3 texts and 3 headings. Match the headings to the text. You see, the answer is very often, it depends. And the question is, it depends on what? Actually, if these 3 texts are quite similar and 3 headings are quite similar, it can be even intensive reading, right? But if the 3 texts are different and 3 headings are quite different, then it can be even skimming. So what I mean to say that nearly every task that we will see now, the answer is it depends. Look at the next one, for example. Find these words in the text and match them to the definitions provided below. This is pretty much straightforward, isn't it? If we find the words in the text, we'll look at the context around these words, and we just match them to the definition, which is this one, right? Deducing the meaning from context. Exactly, exactly. The next one, read the text and find out if the sentences are true or false. Oh, that's a classic task, but again, it depends. It depends on how many sentences you have. What details are they asking about? It can be intensive reading, but it can even be skimming. For example, this text is about restaurants, right? That's also true or false, right? And can be a combination as well. That's what I'm driving you at, guys. We need to be conscious, right? We cannot say that read the text and find out if the sentences are true or false. This is always an intensive reading task. Not at all. It can be skimming, it can be scanning, it can be inference as well, depending on the content of the questions and of the text. The next one, read the text and choose the best summary. Depends on the summary, right? Depends on the summary, how detailed the summary is. How detailed, how detailed the summary is, basically. Yeah. The next bunch of the tasks is, where would you find the text? In a brochure, advertisement, or a travel book? That's kind of easy, isn't it? What is it? Mm-hmm. You see, you're pretty much unanimous, right? Skimming, 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 skimming. Yes. Oh, inference. Ooh. Well, maybe, maybe. Again, it depends on the content of the text, right? Yeah, if there is no straightforward information there, it can be even inference. But my feeling is that it's kind of skimming, yeah, because you kind of get the absolute general idea of what the text is about. Read and decide whether he's lying or not. Notice the word decide. Oops. Okay. Notice the word decide. This is probably deducing, uh, decide whether he's lying or not. It can be scanning. It can be scanning, like Olga is saying, if we have the straightforward word in the text. I wouldn't say it's very poor because, again, you need to read the text. For me, you need to read the text in detail and maybe even make some logical conclusions to see if this person is lying or not, Skimming. You see, that's really interesting to see in the chat how many different opinions you have. And that's because everybody sees is that, no, no, it's not about age. Yeah. Not about age and dates. Uh, yeah, so, but the next one, how old is he? Where was he born? Which school did he go to? So, yeah, that's definitely, I'm waiting for the word. Scanning. Yes, that's definitely scanning. This is clear, right? No doubts here. All right, the next one. You have 1 minute. Read the text for gist. Ta-da! Uh, yeah, when we ask students to read the text for gist, uh, that's our professional terminology, but you cannot say to students read the text for gist, right? Exactly. For me, this is a poor task. Students need to understand what kind of information they need to get from the text. So that's why, no, no, let's not do this. The next one, read and find out how healthy this person is. Mhm. So this can be skimming, can be intensive reading. Again, it depends on how straightforward the information is in the text, right? Okay, let's move on because we need to do something more. Reading strategies, they're all based on the conscious attitude to the subskills. So that's why please write your comments in the chat, but I will kind of hurry up to give my comments as well right away. So for example, reading carefully every word in order to understand the entire text. This can be done, but definitely not at the beginning of the reading lesson, right? Actually, the main thing that we need to do, and this is what we hardly ever do properly, is teaching students how to read fast. So that's why reading carefully in order to understand every word, in fact, it can be done even for homework, right? Uh, that's why, yeah, it's possible, but not at the beginning of the reading lesson. Reading difficult passages aloud before we answer questions about it. Uh, no. I'm sure from your own experience, you know that if you read the text aloud, very often you just understand less, right? So that's why reading out loud, reading the passages aloud, actually doesn't help better understanding. Yeah, it's distraction. It is pure pronunciation work. It's pronunciation work more than reading, right? Exactly. The next one, translating difficult passages into language L1. So translating is not a swear word anymore. We know that the paradigm is kind of changing, but still, maybe that's kind of the last remedy, right? Still, we need to develop students' ability to understand the text without translation. In general, by the way, I've seen quite a lot of articles where people talk about not about 4 but 5 language skills, and the fifth one is translating. So that's why translating as the means to teach reading, I'm not sure it's effective. Ignoring unfamiliar words and maybe coming back to them later, yes, this is a very useful skill, and this is actually what we do quite a lot in our first language, right? It's impossible to know all the words, even in your first language. So that's why being able to get as much meaning as you can from the text without understanding every word, that's a great thing. Yes, and thank you, Kata. It really boosts confidence, right? So you become a more mature reader. The next one is talking about a text before starting to read it. Yeah, that's a good idea. But here we have some dangerous stuff. I've seen quite a lot of lessons where teachers actually reveal the text content before students start to read it. That's why talking about the text topic, kind of introducing students to the text topic, that's fine. Helping them to make predictions, helping them to be ready to read, that's one thing, but not revealing the text, text content. Finding the sentences that contain the main idea, that's a super important thing. This is what I told you. I'm a big fan of fast reading strategies that we need to teach students, because every now and then teachers say, okay, now we need to read the text fast. You have 2 minutes, go. Uh, I mean, it's kind of cruel to students sometimes, I think, because they just don't know how to read fast. They don't know how to get the essential information from the text. And this is one of the main strategies for that, finding the sentences that contain the main idea. Normally, we all know, they are normally at the beginning or at the end of the paragraph. Yes, superpower of whales, thank you. Um, Also, looking for clues in the title, subtitles, pictures, and other visuals before reading and also during reading. Uh, that's also one of the strategies of quickly digesting the text and getting information from different clues, including the visual ones, pictures, and so on. So yeah, it works on predicting information and it works on fast reading. And setting time limits before gist reading. This is vital. I just mentioned it. Students need to understand that gist reading is fast. And actually, in our everyday life, I would say about 90% of reading is kind of gist reading. That's why, gist reading is something that we need to develop separately. As I always like to say in different seminars, that gist reading lives here and detailed reading lives here. These are two different sub-skills, absolutely different sub-skills. So we need to develop them separately. Um, and now to summarize what I've been talking about, do's and don'ts for a teacher. Again, now it's very easy for you to respond. They will be numbered. You can write down the number and write down do or don't. Set the context and make sure students know what the text is about before reading. We've just talked about, and I'm sure that you will write do. Yes, the second one, set the task, give instructions during or after the listening or reading. Don't, exactly. Uh, that's the golden rule number, you know, I always number the golden rules in teacher training courses. So it can do like number 57 or number 2. Yeah, given the task during or after listening or reading, does make a lot of sense. It converts the reading or listening lesson into a test, not a lesson. The next one, let students read the text more than once. Yes, we do it. And we do it for the reason that we are developing their skills. We are not testing, but we are developing their skills. The only thing to remember is for each time when students read the text, they need to have a separate task. Or, for example, they had like 10 comprehension check questions. And after reading the text, they say, teacher, we haven't been able to answer all the questions. You say, okay, tell me how many questions you have already answered. 5, 6, 7. Fine. Now you read the text again and find the answers to the other 4 questions. Okay, so that's kind of the task. They feel that they're making progress. They feel that they're not stuck, and this is psychologically very important. Next one, answer students' questions about new words while the group is reading. Uh, don't. Agreed. So that's number 4 already. Yeah, don't do that because actually words, we just mentioned that the students need to develop the sub skill of guessing the words from the context And while they are reading, they are developing reading skills. They are not concentrated on vocabulary as a separate kind of task, right? Developing reading skills and teaching vocabulary, these are kind of different skills, and we need to, different things to teach, and we need to be aware of that, right? Personalize the subject at the pre-stage or during the follow-up task. Yes. Yes, and this is quite natural. We do it for the reason that you personalize the subject at the pre-stage because it should be interesting for students, and that's why you just develop, you motivate them to read. And in the follow-up task, it's very natural reaction to the text, right? That's what you normally do in life. After having read something, after having listened to some text, you just express yourself, right? You share, maybe share some story, similar story, you share your reaction to it. The next one, teach all the unknown vocabulary in the text. I'm glad you write no. Yes, somebody Olga wrote no. No, in a reading lesson. If you want to teach all the unknown vocabulary, go ahead. But after this lesson, you need to plan a separate vocabulary lesson and teach it. Go ahead, but not in a reading lesson. Exactly. Right. Let students check in pairs before the whole class feedback. Yeah, that's a good idea. For many reasons, right? They help each other. I don't think we need to discuss the value of pair work, right? So it's really cool. Give students time to read the questions before a reading. It is highly recommended. Let's put it in this way. Highly recommended. For listening, it's vital. For reading, it's highly recommended so that students clearly understand what they are looking for in the text. But even if they don't have time to read the questions, they must have these questions at least, you know, they see the text and the questions on the left or on the right. They should have these questions. Give students one handout per pair if going to do a reading comprehension check activity. That's a tricky one. Uh, mhm. Yeah, thank you for no, Paula, and I'm sure somebody will write yes now, maybe, and both will be right, because one handout per pair, if handout contains only the comprehension check questions, then it's okay. They can just look at these questions, they discuss the questions in pairs, but the text itself, each student must have a handout with the text. And the last one, we already talked about it. Let students read the text in detail as homework. That's an option. That's an option if you don't have time in the lesson. You see, develop as again. Probably I'm kind of obsessed with that, but good. It's not only for online kata. It can be done as homework. Why? Because for me, the main teacher's job is to develop fast reading skills. That's what students cannot do at home. But reading the text in detail, answering intensive task or even inference task, they can do it at home. Certainly, you're losing the chance to let them talk in pairs, to discuss it. There is a disadvantage for that, but still, it can be an option. Okay, so it looks like I'm really good at timing today, which is unexpected. Okay, the conclusion. I want everybody to, I hope that that's the conclusion that we all can make after this short presentation, is that the ideas we discussed today are much more complex. Reading is do you remember this big chart, a big table with a lot of words to discuss, a lot of terminology, and this terminology is all about reading anyway. So that's why it's impossible to work on these things during one lesson. So processing information may differ from reader to reader because everybody has their own learning preferences, we all know it, and you can hardly ever predict everything that will happen in your reading lesson. And also in real life, the division between the above mentioned subskills is not as clear cut as we often try to make it seem. So this is still artificial, you know, artificial things to separate these subskills. As I said, one lives here, the other lives here, but again, it's kind of artificial, clear cut, right? But anyway, I hope that finishing my presentation, I conveyed my main message that reading is a very complex subskill that we need to take care of, equally at least as taking care of listening, speaking, and writing. Here's my email. Thank you very much. It's very easy to remember. The first letter, 3 letters of my name, and the 4 letters of my surname. And I see one question. Do you think development of fast reading skills is a different area of teaching than reading for critical thinking development? I think yes. I think critical thinking development, yeah, fast reading skills, I wouldn't put them very close to each other, because critical thinking requires intensive reading. Critical thinking requires even inference, for example, but fast reading skills is mainly skimming, maybe scanning, very quick scanning. Yeah, that's it. I see the comments in the chat. Students are often annoyed with the need to read. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. And my time is over. So thank you, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Andriy. Very good, very interesting. Some interesting points. You mentioned about reading for gists, and often, you know, people forget that it's got to be done pretty quickly. And I agree. And I think, you know, there's so much more to just giving them a book. Hey, get on, read it. So thank you so much for that. Very, very interesting. And I hope one day again, like everybody else, I hope you can come to.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
Training Day will happen again face to face sometime in hopefully the not so distant future.
Sure.
So,
yes. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.